In the shadow of the third anniversary of the Marikana shootings, 336 injured Marikana miners will file claims worth over 1 billion rand. That's a civil claim process. Senior Counsel for the Injured Marikana miners, Advocate Dali Mpofu, SC, joins us now for more. Evening to you, Dali. There's a lot of issues here, but we have to take a bit at a time, as always. First of all, let's just look at that report, the Farlam report, which took ages to come out, and what it says and what the response has been politically and administratively. Perhaps your view at that from the perspective that you're representing, and then we'll talk about the civil claim.
Yes, thank you, Jess. Yes, that's quite important. Everyone put their hopes on the Marikana Commission, given that it took 3 years to complete, a total of 300 days indeed. Unfortunately, the response generally has been one of disappointment, at least from the people that I represent. And that was expressed very sharply when we consulted with them in reaction. And so one of the things that we have been instructed to do is to challenge the outcome of that report and have it reviewed in a court of law. But because of the deadlines in relation to the civil claims, we've had to prioritize that, because for the judicial review, we would have another 6 months.
Just pause on the civil claim for the moment. Perhaps it's not so much the report as the lack of or the kind of response that there has been politically to the report.
Absolutely. Well, that too, even the little that the report did point to has not been actioned really. If you'll remember, one of the people who were figured were the National Commissioner. And instead of action being taken, she was asked to respond and given a deadline at the end of July.
August, of July,
yes, which she has given. And the sad truth is that she's still there. She's still our commissioner. She hasn't been suspended. We don't know what's going to happen. So that is the frustrating part, the lack of action, as you point out. Yeah.
Also, criticism in the report, sharp criticism of the way the police went about defending the process.
Absolutely. No, in fairness, yes, the report did deal with the deficiencies in the police plan. Our criticism was that it didn't go far enough into the underlying causes. But yes, there's no doubt that the police plan and how it was executed was severely criticized.
All right, let's look. Sometimes when the criminal law doesn't work or takes too long, a separate civil process can be put in place. Tell us the essence of that.
Yes, well, that involves essentially the claims that will be made by there was one group of the dependents of those who were deceased that a separate group of people are acting for. I act for the injured ones, those who survived. And the injuries range from minor injuries to quite severe injuries indeed.
What kind of injury are we talking about?
I think the worst I can think of is there's a guy who still has a bullet lodged on his head. Who still is immobile, can't walk properly, talks in a slurry fashion. There's another one was 23 who had 7 or 8 bullets around his body. I think he only survived because he's younger than the other people and was able to recuperate.
So how long will that process take?
Well, that process should take another 2 or 3 years, unfortunately. We are obviously hoping that because of some of the criticism that were leveled in the report, that the government might see it wiser to sit around the table and negotiate with the legal teams rather than putting the victims and indeed the country through another elaborate legal process.
Now, looking at that, you don't have to have guilt necessarily for a civil claim to proceed and to succeed.
Absolutely not. Negligence is enough, and all you really should have done something or omitted to do something which caused the calamity that the person suffers. Unlike in a criminal process where you have to have intent, for example, if it's murder, you would have had to have intent to kill the person, which is a different type of process. There are a number of people against whom we will lay criminal charges, but for now we're concentrating on the civil claims, which is just the compensation element.
Obviously you're going to push this, that's your job as the representative. What chances would you say you have of succeeding here?
Well, on the civil claims, I would say pretty good. That is why we think that it would be sensible rather to do it on a negotiated basis, because the negligence of the police and the deficiencies in their plans, as we already pointed out, were there for all to see, and the Commission, with all its weaknesses and criticisms from us, did clearly point out that for example, that if they had waited even a day and planned it more properly, the calamity might have been prevented. So there doesn't seem to be any debate about who's at fault. Yeah.
Your role is interesting. Not always the case that an advocate who's representing a group of people who've been injured and so on is also a political player for the EFF, Economic Freedom Fighters. So politically, you have a different role in relation to this, and that's pretty explosive as well.
Well, yes. Well, yes, I try to separate those roles. So the EFF has issued its own statements and criticisms, and indeed precipitated a debate last Thursday in Parliament where all political parties participated, but it was actually called by the EFF because the EFF regards this as one of the central issues in this program. Indeed, the EFF was born out of partly out of this particular crisis.
That is Senior Counsel Dali Mpofu. He is representing the Injured Marikana miners proceeding with a big civil claim.